The sound of metal clanging echoed down the dimly lit corridor, sharp and hollow, like a cruel reminder of the cage she now called home. The concrete walls were damp, the air heavy with disinfectant and despair. Letitia James sat on the edge of the thin cot, her head buried in her trembling hands, the faint flicker of a fluorescent light above casting shadows that seemed to mock her. To the world outside, she had once been a figure of authority, power, and ambition. But here, stripped of her title, she was just another inmate, wearing an orange jumpsuit that didn't fit her name or her pride. Her heart pounded as she stared at the crumpled note hidden beneath her mattress, a set of instructions hastily scribbled by someone who promised freedom. It was dangerous, reckless, but she had convinced herself it was the only way. She wasn't built for cages, she told herself. Not her. Not the woman who once walked confidently into press conferences, commanding cameras and headlines. Every tick of the prison clock felt like another chain wrapping tighter around her chest. Letitia's cellmate, Maria, noticed the twitch in her jaw and the way her fingers tapped nervously on her thigh. "You're planning something, aren't you?" Maria whispered in a voice that carried both curiosity and fear. Letitia's eyes flicked toward her, sharp and guarded. "You don't know anything." Maria leaned back, studying her. She had been inside longer, seasoned by the suffocating grind of time. Unlike Letitia, Maria had no illusions of escape. She knew how plans usually ended here, with more time, or worse. Still, she couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the fallen prosecutor sitting across from her, crumbling under the weight of her own undoing. The plan itself was simple, or so it looked on paper. A guard had been bribed, a door left unlocked during the night shift, a laundry truck waiting just outside the gates. But every detail depended on timing, and timing was a merciless enemy. As night fell, Letitia pressed her back against the cold wall, listening for the subtle change in the rhythm of the guard's footsteps. Every sound in the prison became heightened, the clatter of trays in the mess hall, the low murmur of women whispering in their bunks, the occasional bark of an officer keeping order. Her pulse throbbed in her temples as the first step of her escape drew near. But what she didn't know, what would shatter everything, was that someone had already betrayed her. The same guard who had pretended loyalty had been feeding information to the warden, waiting for the exact moment to catch her in the act. As she slipped quietly from her cell, heart hammering, Maria's voice whispered after her, "Don't do it. Some cages aren't meant to be broken." Letitia ignored her. Freedom was so close she could almost taste it. The narrow hallways, painted with years of grime, seemed to stretch endlessly before her, every shadow daring her to step into it. She kept low, her breaths shallow, her palms damp. When she reached the laundry room, the door creaked open exactly as the note promised. Her chest swelled with fragile hope. She pushed forward, sliding between industrial machines, the smell of detergent heavy in her nostrils. The truck was there, engine idling faintly, its back doors open like a pair of arms ready to welcome her into the night. She crawled inside, curling herself between bags of linens, her body trembling with adrenaline. For a moment, she imagined the taste of freedom, the wind on her face, the city lights shining once more, the possibility of starting over. But then... boom! The back doors slammed shut, not with the sound of escape but with the finality of a trap. The lights snapped on, flooding the truck with cruel brightness. Standing there, arms crossed, was the warden himself, flanked by two armed guards. Letitia froze, her mouth dry, her body rigid with disbelief. The truck was never her way out, it was her downfall. "You really thought you could outsmart us," the warden said, his voice dripping with contempt. "This isn't a courtroom, Ms. James. This is real life. And here, the walls always win." Her chest collapsed as though the air had been punched out of her. The guards pulled her out roughly, her hands bound tighter than ever before. The other inmates, woken by the commotion, pressed their faces to the small barred windows of their cells, watching as the once powerful woman was dragged back down the corridor in shame. But the story didn't end with her humiliation. Inside her, something cracked. For the first time, she faced the truth she had been running from. That no escape plan, no clever scheme, could save her from the prison she had built inside her own mind long before these walls rose around her. In the days that followed, Maria watched her closely. The defiance in Letitia's eyes dimmed, replaced by something quieter, something raw. One evening, when the two women sat side by side during dinner, Maria leaned close and said, "Freedom doesn't start with a truck outside these gates. It starts in here." She tapped her chest lightly. "Until you face yourself, you'll always be trapped." Letitia didn't respond right away. Her spoon clattered against the metal tray as she thought about the years she spent chasing ambition, the enemies she made, the bridges she burned. She had lived so much of her life running from guilt, from accountability, from herself. And here, in the stark reality of prison, she had tried once more to run. But now, stripped of power and pretense, she began to wonder if Maria was right. Subplots began to unfold around her. One was Maria's own story, a woman who had once escaped poverty by running drugs across borders, only to lose everything when greed caught up with her. In her, Letitia saw a mirror of her own hunger for power, and it terrified her. Another was the quiet resilience of a young inmate named Kayla, who had grown up in foster care and carried a journal filled with poems that spoke of pain, hope, and redemption. Kayla's words, raw and unpolished, began to stir something in Letitia she thought she had lost, the belief that broken things could still be rebuilt. Time inside the prison shifted slowly, but Letitia's heart shifted faster. She started helping Kayla with her writing, teaching her how to structure her thoughts, how to tell her story. And in doing so, Letitia found herself telling her own, piece by piece, not with legal arguments or polished speeches but with honesty. For the first time, she wasn't speaking to convince anyone. She was speaking to heal. Months later, as she stood in the prison yard watching the sun rise over the razor wire, the memory of her failed escape no longer haunted her. Instead, it felt like a turning point, a violent collapse that forced her to rebuild from ashes. She knew she might never leave these walls. But she also knew that freedom wasn't just a matter of open gates. It was a matter of truth. And in that moment, she whispered to herself, boom, not the sound of chains breaking, but the sound of lies shattering. Her plan to escape had blown up, yes. But in the wreckage, she found something she had never expected, a chance at redemption.